Welcome to Tribe Talk, the podcast where we explore the insights, tools, and conversations that support your mental, physical, and spiritual well-being.
We're your hosts, Mike Casey and Ann Hutyra, and each week we're joined by members of the Modern Holistic Health coaching team to help you navigate your healing journey from a root cause perspective.
Whether we're sharing strategies, discussing real client wins, or diving into new areas of mind-body wellness, our goal is to empower you with clarity and direction.
So take a breath, settle in, and enjoy this episode of Tribe Talk. Hello and welcome again. Thanks for joining us. We're excited we have Karin, one of our awesome energetic coaches, with us today. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting topic, Karin. You wanted to talk about post-traumatic growth. And this was interesting because I was like, I had never heard about that originally. Of course, I know post-traumatic stress, PTSD, and all of that. So why don't you kick us off by telling us what this is and why it's important?
Yeah. So thanks for having me again. But post-traumatic growth. So kind of sounds weird, right? How do we grow from a post-trauma experience? And surprisingly, more people grow from a trauma experience than they don't. And so what post-traumatic growth is defined as is a psychological growth experience, transformation following a traumatic or very life-changing event, as opposed to post-trauma syndrome, which is where we stay stuck in the trauma, we stay stuck in the negative emotions of what just happened. When we're able to grow through that and really emphasize that we can learn about ourselves, grow personally, grow spiritually, have a life changing experience from what happened, that's where growth begins.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Karen, do you think, when I hear you explain it that way, I kind of feel like it comes down to a choice, right? Because anytime any of us experiences some sort of traumatic event, we have a choice with what we do after that event, whether we stay stuck or whether we choose perspective. There's many different ways that you can look at different experiences. Um, what do you see? What do you see either in your own life or with your clients? How do you see the differences and how someone chooses what path they're going to go down after an event?
Good question. So, yes, there is a large degree of choice. If we are someone who has already has had experiences in life that has challenged us and we have overcome some of that, we experience resilience within, where we can look at a situation and learn who we are from that, or learn what we want instead. Then the choice after something that's more traumatic is a little easier to navigate. If a person, on the other hand, is one who doesn't speak up, someone who is more prone to a lot of negativity in their life, um, wants to stay stuck in the past, stuck in stories, then growing through a traumatic experience will be a little more challenging for that person. Doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that it's going to take a lot more cognitive awareness, behavioral modifications, and really a big awareness of what their looping rumination thoughts are. Whereas if you're growing, you might be more aware of those quickly and really start to look at your own behavior and go, I don't want that anymore. I want to move forward. So
Mhm.
basically, post traumatic growth is the ability to move forward with a completely different life, because we're not going back to the one we had when the trauma happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
powerful. I love that idea. Growth, and we all have things happen, right? But how do we not let them define us and um and move forward and grow from it? And how, that be part of our story of yeah, who we become, and that we have a choice in some of this matter, right? And what we do. And
Yeah,
so I'm sure that's a big part of what you do.
totally. And what I want to make really clear is this isn't bypassing pain. This isn't bypassing what happened. This isn't pretending that everything happens for a reason. This is that we are making a choice after experiencing the pain, like sitting in that, because there's a point of time where we have to sit in that. We have to sit in what I call the void. Like we have to be there. We have to identify what happened. We have to look at who we are becoming as a result of that, not because of that, but who are we? Not who are we because that happened, but who are we because we want to move forward.
Mhm.
And so learning our lessons about who we are, not the lesson that just happened. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're not bypassing anything. And this isn't just like BS positive thinking. This is truly growing. This is making significant changes in our life.
Mhm.
Yeah, and obviously there's a tension between this honoring the pain, moving forward, letting people grieve properly. So how do you see and how do you navigate that space without just bypassing grief and yeah, not saying like, oh, well, let's act like that didn't happen. But also, yeah, not letting people stay stuck in it.
Right. So allowing people to feel through it, and asking questions, allowing them to sit with their body, sit with the emotions that are coming up, identify what happened, whether it's a loss, whether it's an attack, whatever it is, but identify it. Don't ignore it, but identify it. And how did you move through that? Who are you in that? That's positive. And that's not the positive thinking part of it. That's actually learning beyond your resilience, because resilience is different than post-traumatic growth, because resilience is something that we can bounce back from, as opposed to growth is a move forward. So we don't want to bounce back to anything. We want to bounce forward. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when I'm working with people, and even in my own life, I've had to sit in the uncomfortable. And that's where most people distract from. And don't get me wrong, distractions are really healthy and really, really fabulous for a period of time. It's when we continue to distract, continue to shop or eat or drink or fix or, whatever. That's the distraction that keeps us stuck. We're not moving forward. But a healthy distraction for a period of time and then go back to where we are. What are we feeling? What did we lose? How is this going? What do I want? And continuing to ask, what do you want to move forward?
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you see more people getting stuck? Because yeah, I kind of thinking like some people maybe are stuck in the trauma and like that. And then some people on the opposite, completely avoiding it and distracting themselves and not wanting to address it. So those seem like opposite ends, right? That neither we'd want to be in, right? So what do you
Yeah.
see people do more so?
I think it's a good 50-50. I think it's in the ones that want to stay in that space. And I say want to stay in that space because a lot of times we create identities around things that have happened to us,
Mhm.
right? So it now becomes who we are. Like this happened and this is who I am.
Mm,
And it can be anything. So it's not just, it can be a health diagnosis, speaking to our crowd. People identify with my cancer, my anxiety, my depression, my. And it's like, no, 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 please don't own that.
Mhm.
Let's move forward. What do you want instead? What do you want to have instead? But with regards to like a big traumatic event happening and having a diagnosis of a challenging health concern can be a big traumatic event. But what we want to focus on in the areas of growth to, answer your question as well is like, how do we move through that? Is what's your appreciation for life Is it changing? Is it growing? Is what matters to you shifting? And that's one of the first domains of being able to find growth. And whether or not your relationships with people around you are changing. Are you distracting and getting away from them? Are you isolating? Are you hibernating? Or are you creating closeness with people? Have you created more empathy within to understand and have compassion for people who have been through really big traumatic events because now you have? And then identifying the possibilities for your life. What's next? Where do you want to go? New paths, new purpose, making meaning out of what happened. I help a lot of women who have lost their children through a couple of different organizations. I wasn't doing that before, but my mess, even though it's not a mess, but there's a saying, making meaning out of a mess. So if we make meaning and purpose and fulfillment out of what happened in our lives, that is huge growth. And then are we having a different spiritual experience with ourselves and the universe, the planet? Mm-hmm. Those are signs that we're growing.
Yeah, as practitioners, I think we all see this in our own clients. I think for myself personally, as I get to know a new client, I can oftentimes tell when they've really taken on the identity of their diagnosis or their health condition, and they've made that a part of who they are without really realizing that. And then they come to us not wanting to be unwell and wanting to get healthy, not realizing they've identified so much with the label, whatever diagnosis they were given or what their past experience around their health has been. This is sometimes really hard to wake people up from. I've had that experience myself with my own clients, getting them to see that they're stuck in that loop. How do you do that, Karin? How do you bring this to people's attention to help them see the patterns that they're stuck in and want something different, right? Because the person has to want something different. And when you ask, what do you want? Sometimes they don't have an answer right away to what they want because they're so stuck in their loop, right?
Yes, yes. So a lot of times when people don't know what they want, and I ask the same question, I know we all do. Okay, well, what do you want? How do you want to feel? I don't know, because they have felt so unwell for a long time. And so I then ask them, well, okay, well, what don't you want? So a lot of people are really capable of saying a lot of things that they don't want. So that gives us a lot of clue right there, what they don't want. And so then, okay, so can we flip that over to a complete 180 of like, okay, then do you want this? No. Okay, well, then how do you flip that for you? And what do you want that's not this? So we go back to what they don't want. So there's a lot of capability right there. But I've got some pretty awesome questions that really make people's eyeballs spin and their brains go like whirly, whirly, that they have to really consider what I'm asking them. And so it really dives into their unconscious mind, their unconscious self, to bring forward what they actually do want. And it's pretty big light bulbs when that starts to happen for people. And it takes time. This is not something that can happen right away. And post-traumatic growth doesn't happen, 3 days after an event happens for someone. It usually takes some time. We have to go through all of the exchange of understanding that something really life-changing just happened. And we have a lot of emotion around that. So we can't just dive in 3 days later. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's immediate. It just depends on the person. Mm-hmm. But so we're talking about completely identifying with the event or completely disassociating from it, right? So we have these two spectrums. And this side, the disassociated, looks like they might have moved on. But that group of people almost always is more inclined to really not know what they want because they're not feeling it. They haven't taken the time to really sit with what happened. And I don't mean sit with it like relive it and relive it and relive it. I mean, identify it. What has changed in your life? What just happened? Yeah. And there's more questions, but
Yeah, but
we
no,
don't need to do a whole session right now.
that's so powerful, though. I'm just thinking about you bringing these people through, and you're so good at what you do. We hear it from our clients all the time, and to get people to think about these things, that people just get stuck in these patterns, and that's why a lot of people are the way they are, and helping them think about things, but then also figuring out how to get past that conscious mind into the subconscious. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating for me to learn and hear how you do some of this.
I want to just touch on one more thing and how all this relates to health and what's going on in the body. So when we either stay stuck in something that happened or we have disassociated and we're just like ignoring it, pretending like it didn't happen, and we're just moving on, like you're just getting over it. Neither one of those two things is actually healing. And I mean healing from an energetic, emotional, mental, maybe a physical standpoint if something happened physically. But what happens when we basically stuff it one way or the other by owning it or ignoring it? Unprocessed trauma creates a lot of dysfunction within the body, and it can create chronic stress physiologically in the form of significantly increased inflammation markers and levels, where you can't figure out why you've got this 10-pound suit of fluff on you and you just don't feel well, but your cortisol levels spike because you're in constant threat. You never know when the next shoe is going to drop, and so you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning, maybe 4:30 in the morning, can't go back to sleep. Complete immune dysregulation and also suppression, so your immune system isn't working properly. Gut disruption, because if you're not resting and your cortisol levels are spiked, your inflammation is high, your gut's not functioning, then your vagus nerve is on complete meltdown, and serotonin and dopamine are not firing properly. And then sleep. Yeah. So those are all symptoms of many of the people that we work with coming to us. And that doesn't mean they are in significant trauma events. This is just also our world. But when we can start processing some of these traumas, our nervous system starts to regulate. And I do a whole thing on nervous system regulation because it's so important. Because if we're not safe, the trauma can't move through. Like we can't process that. Inflammatory markers start to decrease. Immune system starts to function properly. And our behavior in food and sleep and choices and our thoughts start to improve to be more elevated and a little bit more joyful. I remember the first time that I said, when one of my clients said to me, "How are you doing?" And I said, "You know what? I'm having a good day." And I was like, "Who said that?" Who actually just said that? Because I am not having a good day. But I was. And my immediate response to her question was, "I'm having a good day." And just the words coming out of my mouth were like, "You're not allowed to have a good day. No. Put those back in. You can't have a good day." Yes, we can. We can feel okay. Even when big, horrible stuff happens.
I think it's important that you laid out those symptoms because a lot of people, I think, don't always realize that what they're experiencing in their body is a side effect of things they haven't processed or are struggling to process on a mental, emotional, energetic level. And I think it's also important that we talk about trauma and types of trauma because it doesn't take a big, huge traumatic event to put someone in a position where their body is responding in that sort of way. And if you look at what happened during the COVID years, A lot of people are
Right.
still recovering from that and being isolated, watching the news all day, all the doom scrolling. Those types of things can put the body and the nervous system in a traumatic place. It doesn't have to be a big, huge event like a loss or a diagnosis or an accident. It can be anything.
Yep. And just to go back to that, the COVID event, that was a huge traumatic event
Mhm.
for everybody individually, how
Mhm.
whether you want to believe that or not, and then familial, and then
Mhm.
community, and then collectively and
Yeah.
worldwide. This affected the world. So this
Mhm.
was a huge traumatic experience, and many people have not recovered from that. And
Mhm.
now we've got another whole series of stuff going on in our world today, right now, that is probably even more challenging.
Mhm.
It's ongoing. Our ancestors used to be able to run away from the threat and then go back to their cave and relax, and their nervous system would settle back down. Today, in our world, that never happens.
Yeah.
It's constantly on.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I wanted to address something you just said, Anne. It doesn't have to be one big event, like you said. In childhood, if we are in a family situation that isn't really supportive and loving and kind, the little everyday things that happen end up being trauma responses within the body. And so
Mhm.
the body starts to brace every day for what's next. And that's how we then grow up. And then so now we're looking for the constant threat out there. And that can be settled down significantly.
Mhm.
And we can start moving forward from that instead of constantly looking at that past
Mhm.
living there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back to talking about the body and health. First, I think it's good for people to be aware that these types of things and how they're integrated and affecting them physically, because I think most people would go to thinking it's just a physical problem. And that's what we talk about is the root causes, not just toxins and other things, but traumas and mental patterns. So it's good to be aware of that. And then what you see, I'm just curious, like related to body and health, do you see a difference when somebody is holding on to the trauma versus when they've started to integrate it and create meaning from it? And do you see different symptoms or different patterns with different things that people are doing?
So I think the biggest difference that I start to notice is it's going to sound really funny. When people first start working with me, a lot of times there's apprehension. Like, oh, what is she going to make me do now?
Mhm.
It's pretty funny. And I don't make people do anything, but that's the feeling. But I start to notice that when they first jump on the call with me, 3 or 4 sessions in, they're smiling. Their face is a little brighter. They're using different phrases, they're using different words. A lot of them are not owning their symptoms anymore or their diagnosis. My favorite saying right now is your labels are your limits. So if you have created a label for yourself, or if someone else has given you one, that's your limit. That's what you're going to be. And so letting go of those. The same thing applies for if something horrible happened in your life, trauma happened in your life. If you label yourself as that, it's going to continue to stay. So what I notice is people start speaking about the event that happened or their diagnosis or how they're feeling differently, more positively, less searching and searching and searching the internet for resolution. They're finally stop focusing on the problem and they start focusing on the solution.
Mm, that's powerful.
And that makes me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
I
them
think
smile too.
I think that's a really common loop we see people get stuck in when they have a diagnosis, is they get so focused on the diagnosis itself. It reminds me of one client that I worked with a while back that had a pretty big diagnosis, and she spent all of her free time researching that diagnosis. It was literally what she did the majority of her day. And we would talk about that and how that made her feel, and that would make her anxious and it would give her anxiety, but she would keep doing it, sometimes losing sleep, staying up, going down those rabbit holes and researching. And it sometimes takes a while for a person to realize that those types of behaviors are feeding into what they don't want. It's a part of the
Yep.
problem a lot of times.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I want to give some questions for people to ask themselves that they can start moving into growth if they're listening to this or watching this. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Great.
instead of being avoidant, feeling. So avoiding asks trauma to stay active because if we're going to avoid it, it's not processed. And we all know that if we have unresolved anything, it stays within until it keeps coming up and coming up and coming up to be resolved. And then we go, no, 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 we're going to turn Netflix up a little louder, turn it, put it back, put it back. Instead of doing that, ask, what is this trying to tell me?
Mm.
So if feelings start coming up, ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Especially if it's an uncomfortable feeling. Is it sadness? Is it anger? What are you angry about? What are you sad about? Are you angry that you have this diagnosis? Are you sad that you have this diagnosis? Why? Why are you sad? Why are you angry? Ask yourself questions. And making meaning out of what is happening or what has happened. Asking, what now? What am I going to do now? Who am I now? Instead of, why is this happening to me? Or why did this happen to me?
Mm.
Mhm.
Because it did. Because if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't have. And I know that that's a very controversial subject,
Mhm.
but if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't have. So, what now? And then being willing to letting go of some old thoughts and habits. So, what thoughts and habits are keeping you stuck in that trauma? And allowing new ideas to start coming forward. Again, asking that question, what do you want? What do you want instead? And a lot of people come up with some pretty awesome stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Even just this line of questioning, it helps a person with the processing, right? When someone is
totally.
asking
Yeah.
the question and giving themselves the space and the silence to, even if they don't know the answer, what comes up. I think a lot of clients will say, am I doing this right? How do I do this? But there's not a right or wrong way to do this. Ask yourself the questions and be quiet and listen. And
Yep.
whatever needs to come up for you is going to come up. And this sounds really simple, but it's very powerful when someone gives them the permission to do this with themselves, right?
Yes. And then conversely, doing that with yourself is really important. But also, just like as in with grief and so many other things in our life, having someone to sit with you while you're processing this, being witnessed, and having somebody who has the capacity to hold space, to listen, and to ask some pretty defining questions to move you from stuck to forward is crucial. Because if you have somebody who will just stay stuck with you in this mess of whatever that is, that could be helpful for a moment. But if it's continued rumination and continued staying in the problem, and I'm not saying that anybody's life is a problem, but I'm just using that for people to be able to identify. If we stay stuck in what we want to be out of, we can't do that alone most of the time. The mind that creates the problem cannot usually find the solution.
Mhm.
And we might not have created the problem, but we have a brain that is like this. I don't know how to describe it on Zoom or whatever, but we have an idea and we have a box around it. And that box is a boundary. And our boundaries are our perceptions and our lived experiences. And we have a very hard time as humans being able to break through that box, those boundaries, with our own ideas, our own perceptions, our own ideas. because they're only as big as we are. So when we get other people to ask questions or to have a different perspective, it starts to punch through that box and some new things start coming in. So that's why being able to be witnessed and be heard and have some questions asked by professionals is really important. We're not
Breaking
here to
trauma.
do this alone.
Mhm.
Trying to walk through a trauma alone is probably the worst idea on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're helping people break the trauma response pattern and then see outside of that and move forward, which is so powerful. As you were talking about some of the stuff is making me think, obviously, you can't change the fact that this event happened, this trauma, but we do have a choice in not letting it define us forever, or us empowering people that they're in control to do something with this and move forward with it and have that morph into a new you, a new, better you. And how did that impact you in a positive way, not just being the victim forever?
Yeah. Because if we're a victim, we're living in a past event. The unfortunate side of that is if we have an unresolved event that has happened in our life, every time we think about it, speak about it, feel it, our body has no idea that that is not happening right now today. So it relives the whole thing all over again with all the hormones, all the stress, all the feelings, all of the fight or flight kicks in, breathing shallows. We go into survival mode all over again every single time. So speaking about it over and over and over again is also not a good idea. Moving through it, whatever it is, it's possible.
Our bodies and our brains are so powerful. You make me think we could be either our worst enemy or use what we have to power us for healing and for change and for getting us out of our situation. But a lot of times people are their own worst enemy. And they're just, like
Yep.
you said, wow, how powerful that is. You were going through the experience, but they're doing it to themselves without even knowing it.
Yes. And then the other not so fabulous part about that is, I think I've talked about this before, is that the story that we're telling ourselves again, especially if something happened more than yesterday, because we delete, distort, and generalize every single thing that's happening to our lives immediately. But literally, if the event happened, if something happened to us more than a couple weeks ago, some part of the story is no longer true. We've created an identity. We've added something to it because we've forgotten a detail. So we have to make it up in our head. And so the longer we go telling the story, the further from the truth it is. And so a lot of times we're telling stories that are not even close to being true. And we've now created an identity around that, or we believe that to be who we are, or we believe that we were a bad person because of something happened, or we did something so egregious because that happened to us that that's who we are now. But that's not even a real story, or it's not even a true story. It's real because it keeps coming up, but it's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think a lot of people, they need help to see and identify and pull them out of this cycle and let them know even what's possible. Really amazing work that you're doing with clients and how
I
much
mean,
change
I've
they're
had to
seeing.
do that myself. I've had to go ask for help to get out of the loop, to get out of the stuck. And I'm grateful that I knew that early on because I know all of this. I know all of what I'm saying. And I didn't want to get stuck in the story. I didn't want to get stuck in bed under the covers, crying, being miserable, being angry, being resentful, being just an angry human being because of a loss in my life, because I lost my son. I didn't want to live like that. So I had to go ask for this help, knowing full well about this. I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't do it for myself. You know, there's a saying that we can see every single part of our body except our face. We have to have a mirror. We have to have someone showing us back ourselves or asking us questions to our face. And that's, I think, the work we all do. Is we are the mirrors for our clients, and we get to show them how to do something different.
You are a great example, Karin. And I think
Oh, thanks.
we've seen some amazing turnaround with some of our clients who have gone through this process, working with Mike and I, and working with you and Rosita, and working on all of it, the body and the mind and the emotions and the trauma. We've seen some amazing turnaround when the client's willing to get vulnerable and do that work and learn the tools from you. And these tools that you teach, I mean, the questions you gave today are invaluable, but these tools that you teach, they're going to help a person for the rest of their life. Once I think someone goes down this path of learning themselves, learning how their brain works, the stories they create about themselves, the traps they get stuck in, I think the awareness for the person just grows the more they move down that path. And so this work you do is amazing. I love seeing the clients get unstuck from their own mess that they've been dealing with for years.
It's my purpose. It's why I'm on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, truly, I'm not just saying that. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, is helping myself and helping everybody else feel well, and then allowing others to help me.
Well, yeah, you're doing a great job. And like I said, a good example of you've gone through some of this. And I think also why you have such a powerful presence behind it, and a good example of not letting circumstances define you, but then changing your story and creating something new and beautiful out of it. And even though it's still a struggle at times, and you're real about that, and it's an ongoing process with all of this growth, right? Levels of growth at different times, but it's awesome to see you're living this out.
I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. It's necessary. It's necessary for me. It's necessary so that I don't end up not well. And last year, I had to figure that out, of not feeling well and really going inward about all that. And what wasn't I focusing on? So another layer of growth, another layer of acceptance, another layer of really not resisting and suffering, but allowing acceptance to be able to find peace. Want me to repeat that one? Not resisting to create suffering, but accepting to find peace. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Good to sit on that and process that.
I look at this journey like an onion. You know, you're like peeling the layers of the onion, and you might go a period of time without peeling any layers back, but then all of a sudden, a couple layers start to come off, and it's a lifelong process, I think. It's the human experience.
It is. Yeah. And, I think it's also really good to take that time of not peeling back some of the layers. I think there's the rest in the look at how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In spite of it all.
You don't want to ever feel like I'm never going to get there. So I talk about with my clients measuring backwards and thinking that that's very important. Not always just seeing we're not where we want to be, but measuring backwards where we've come and how much progress. And you're right. I think it's good to have breaks and things to just allow ourselves to just, okay, we've made a lot of progress, and let yourself sit in that. And then as things move forward and things rear their head, okay, you can dig deeper at the right times, different seasons for different things. This has been awesome. Thanks so much, Karin. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and experience. And that everybody's very blessed in getting to work with you and helping process through these hard things. These are hard things, but you come with so much knowledge and wisdom about it. It's such a great way to get people to open up and create that change. And that's what's powerful.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right. Well, yeah, until next time, thanks everyone for joining us. And we will look forward to bringing you more fun information soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Tribe Talk. Each week, our coaching team is here to help you understand your health, uncover root causes, and take empowered steps toward transformation. Be sure to subscribe and join us for the next episode as we continue exploring tools and wisdom to support your healing journey.